Well, welcome again to another Friday night. We're starting to get into how to heal from this fawning issue, unfawning, as Dr. Ingrid Clayton has talked about it. What I want to start with today is I want people to realize that fawning isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes we still will need to fawn as part of our adult life. That shouldn't be our constant coping strategy, but there will be times when we need to do that. And so we're not saying you got to get rid of fawning totally and never do it again. We're talking about learning not to use it as your constant survival thing, but to be in your ventral vagal state, your healthy connection, safe place, but then be able to go to fawning when it's appropriate. So let me start again by reading from Dr. Ingrid Clayton. The process of unfawning is a paradigm shift. It's not about never fawning. There will be contexts when fawning is appropriate. Just as fight response is appropriate at times, but not all the time, unfawning means that we don't live in a trauma response 24/7, self-abandoning at every turn. So last time we looked at kind of the pre-tools to the tools to really begin to address the fawning characteristics. So today I want to really dig into the necessary steps to healing from fawning. So last time it was really about becoming attuned to yourself, to your body, attuned to your environment, so that you're not just in tune to those in authority. That was what was necessary as a fawner. It's you become attuned to yourself. You have an internal compass now, not an external compass. So the first one of these tools is regulating your nervous system. And I think this is a massive one for everybody with trauma, because what happens for people in trauma is that their nervous system, they don't have a co-regulator to help them regulate their emotions, so they go to fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn. They can't get to safety. And so their emotions are either repressed totally, or they go from 0 to 100 in a nanosecond. What happens in adult life now is if something triggers an old wound, they get dysregulated. They fly off. And so learning to regulate your emotions becomes such an important tool. Now, in the light of fawning, what is important to understand is that a fawner tried to regulate their emotions through others. So they thought, if I could regulate dad's emotions and get dad happy so dad's not angry, then I can regulate my own emotions. Then they get married, and if I could regulate my partner's emotions because they're upset and cranky, then I can be happy. So there's always a middleman to regulating their emotions, and it's I regulate me by regulating you. That was their approach to regulating their emotions. And so what we have to learn now is that I don't need a middleman. I can regulate my own emotions. You can behave the way you want, and I can regulate my emotions and manage it and not get all triggered. That's on you. I don't need you to settle down in order for me to settle down. That is a massive shift. That is so important. Now, it's challenging because what you're going to find is if you've been fawning for years and you've been attuned to everybody else, is you're attuned and therefore triggered by every little change in them where they now act different from what you expect they normally will act like. And so if they're acting a little bit different, what's going on here? Are they going to do something bad? Is this going to get out of hand? And you get triggered. And you have thousands of triggers that are happening subconsciously that cause you to feel lack of safety. And once you feel lack of safety, your emotions get dysregulated. Your stress system gets activated. And you immediately want to go to fight, flight, freeze, or to your fawn responses. So now I'm going to dance. I'm going to take care of you. I am going to perform. I'm going to run around like a chicken with my head cut off to try and make sure everybody's okay so that I can be okay. So what you have to realize is, in learning to regulate your emotions, is you got to manage not just your emotions. You got to manage all of the things that are going to be triggering you throughout a day. And every time you get triggered at a subconscious level, you're going to start to feel a dysregulation. Then you have to say, okay, what's going on here? I need to be able to calm myself down and settle this. So learning your triggers becomes an important part of learning to regulate your emotion. So then, once you've got your triggers, that leads to the next question. Okay, my emotions get dysregulated. How do I regulate them? So we've done videos on regulating your emotions. So bottom line is this. When you are dysregulated, you go out of your ventral state, your place of safety, your place of connection, your place where you can explore, experience all of your emotions and manage your emotions. You go to your sympathetic fight-flight state, or your dorsal-vagal state, which is your freeze, or the blend of fawning. All of those are dysregulated states. All of those are saying, I'm in danger. I need to be protecting myself. So how do I get back to my ventral state, that safe place of connection? How do I get out of that limbic brain that is in survival mode back to my wise cortex? That's what this is all about. You need to have connection. That's a part of what helps you get back. But then we have what we've talked about is top-down approaches and bottom-up approaches. So top-down approaches is what most people want who come out of fawning. And that is, I want to think my way to better emotions. I want to have all of the academic information that will help me calm down. The problem with that is it works sometimes, but in many times the triggers are too intense, and thinking my way isn't going to help me get to a better state. I can't do it. Thinking isn't enough. So you need a bottom-up approach. So top-down is the brain. You start with the top of the brain, the cortex, and you think you can calm the dysregulated lower part of the brain. Bottom-up says, I can't calm it through thinking, so I have to calm it through the brain stem, through somatic activity, through breathing, through movement, through touch, through hugs. All of those help calm the brain stem. Somatic therapy, so that can be pets, art, walking, yoga, breathing, on, and we've done videos on that. So you need to find the ways that help you when you get dysregulated, both top down and bottom up, that help you get to a regulated place again, to that safe place. So it's not just, again, activities that you do by yourself. There really has to be also connecting with a safe person who can be a co-regulator for you, who can help you as you begin to learn to regulate your emotions. So be prepared that once you get dysregulated, you learn now to do things differently. So instead of going back off the old scripts where you always carry out the same behaviors and the same responses that you've done for many, many years, now you choose to respond differently to a trigger. Problem with that is that actually triggers your nervous system because you're doing something differently. And it's not comfortable with change. It's not sure that change is safe. So to get to a healthy place, you have to go through a transition time where you're doing things differently, and that causes a little bit of extra stress to your nervous system. But it's only temporary. It's adjusting to a new, healthier thing. The next thing that is so important for fawners is this isn't just about learning tools to regulate emotions. And that's sadly where many courses and therapies stop. They just try to get people to regulate their emotions more. You really need to go back and reprocess the trauma. What happens with fawning is you're stuck with trauma, but if you think about it, the fawner had no way of dealing with the trauma to heal it and resolve it. They had no way of learning and using healthy tools that would enable them to deal with the trauma in a healthy way. So their fawning was actually a way of avoiding the pain of the trauma. Their fawning was a way of almost denying certain elements of how much they hurt, how difficult this was, how hopeless they felt. It was a way to try to give themselves power, to try to give themselves a sense of feeling good about themselves, getting validation. And so there was a denial element, there was a suppression of the trauma, an avoidance of the trauma. And as long as they were getting positive validation, they were feeling good and saying, yeah, the trauma's not that bad. I don't need to deal with it. I'm feeling good about myself. And so part of what they don't realize is they're stuck in a pattern that as soon as the pain gets activated, they go to fawning, which helps them feel better. Then they think, okay, that solved it. I don't need to deal with the pain. And they remain stuck in this pattern. So you have to go back and reprocess the trauma. Now, there are all kinds of modalities that have developed for helping people deal with pain, deal with behaviors that aren't healthy. What I think is so important for people to realize is what modality to use really depends on two things: the person and where they're at in their healing journey. So what might work for one might not work for another. What might work at one point of the journey might not work at another point in the journey. So you need a therapist that's really able to be flexible, eclectic almost, that can draw on different modalities, that can help meet you where you're at and give you what you need at that point in the journey. So let me make a couple observations here. Again, many fawners, they're drawn to cognitive, academic type of modalities. And they just think if I get more information and I learn tools, that'll fix me. Those typically help a person to a point, but they don't really deal with the trauma. You have to develop modalities beyond just strictly cognitive ones to heal the trauma. Because healing the trauma is not just an academic exercise. So there's an element of academic. It's healing the body. It's healing the emotions. It's getting in touch with the emotions and body that you have suppressed, that you have dissociated from. And so you need therapies that help you go to your emotions and to your body. Second thing that I would say is some therapists just ask you to talk and tell your story, and they just listen. And they're empathetic, but they don't give you any instruction. They don't give you any information that's going to increase your self-awareness and understanding. That typically doesn't help a trauma person. You need somebody that's a great listener, that is empathetic, yes, that lets you talk through stuff, but then is able to help bring perspectives and information that gives you insight, that gives you a sense of where you need to go, that provides tools that help you heal and grow. That is so important as well. So what I would say is this: we have seen probably some of the best results for healing trauma, for reprocessing trauma. Tools, yes, you need lots of growing self-awareness, and we do tons of giving you information. But when it comes to getting in touch with your body and your emotions and really getting unstuck at that level and healing at that level, we have found EMDR, somatic therapies, compassionate inquiry, internal family systems, inner child, to be some of the most effective at really starting to help people. Because what they begin to realize is fawning was actually a part of the brain trying to protect you. It's a protector. So fawning is a protector. And so those modalities really help people start to understand that, make sense of that, and heal that. The next piece that I think is so important for people to understand is that healing fawning involves grieving. I think that grieving is a constant companion in the early days of recovering from trauma. So just think of some of the things that a fawner will need to grieve. They're going to grieve, and it's not necessarily the bad things that happen to them or kind of physical things that they lost, though there's going to be an element of that. But it's going to be almost hidden types of losses. So the years that they lived behind a mask and weren't authentic, those are going to feel like wasted years. That's going to have to be grieved. The loss of self, because they just became what everybody else wanted. They just served everybody else. So they lost themselves for years. That's going to be something to grieve. Then all the fantasy beliefs that they had about, if I just do this, it'll fix everything. It'll make dad happy. It'll get me love. Fantasy belief after fantasy belief that proved to be a lie. And then the time wasted in adult life still hanging on to those fantasy beliefs in relationships. That has to be grieved. And then coming to accept that you stayed in abusive relationships and all the damage that it did, and not just to you, but to your other loved ones, your children, the years spent there, and that you purposely stayed in even though others might have told you to get out. That has to be grieved. And then not having had a safe childhood, having a childhood where you were neglected or abused, where you didn't matter, where you felt abandoned by your loved ones, that has to be grieved. So many emotional needs that weren't met as a child. So something you should have had your needs met but didn't get, that's a loss. That has to be grieved. And then, because you were in fawning so much, trying to survive, you didn't experience freedom. You didn't experience joy. You didn't experience success. You spent all your time trying to make others comfortable, and you weren't comfortable yourself. You lived in a prison. That has to be grieved. Then that you abandon yourself. That has to be grieved. Then you lost innocence. You lost your ability to trust people. You lost your ability to experience your own emotions, to trust your own intuition, to connect to your body. That has to be grieved. Then you weren't taught tools. You weren't given good role models to parent you. That has to be grieved. So there's a lot of grieving that is part of this healing journey. And just accept it. Yes, in a sense, it adds more pain, and that's why people don't like it and want to avoid it. But it doesn't last for a long, long time. It's just part of the first months, years of the recovery journey. But it does get less and less, and it leads to a deeper sense of peace, a deeper sense of wholeness, a deeper joy. So Risma Manakaman, I hope I'm saying it correctly, says this: there are two kinds of pain. Clean pain is pain that mends and can build your capacity for growth. It's the pain you feel when you know what to say or do when you really don't want to say it or do it, but you do it anyway. Responding from the best part of yourself. Dirty pain is the pain of avoidance, blame, or denial, when you respond from your most wounded parts. Clean pain often requires action. It hurts in the moment, but it also transforms. Paradoxically, only by walking into our pain or discomfort, experiencing it, moving through it, and metabolizing it, can we grow. It's how the human body works. Then the final piece in all of this tool stuff is reparenting yourself. So this to me is, we've done a whole series which ended up being over 100 videos long on reparenting. It's such a key part. So what has happened, why did a child have to fawn, is because they didn't get the parenting they needed. And so a key part of healing, of recovery, is realizing I can become the parent to myself that I've never had, that I've always longed for. So a key starting point for many people is that I have to be willing to look at honestly at my biological parents. And it doesn't say they're all bad, but it's being willing to say they didn't meet some of my needs consistently or at all. That's going to feel disloyal. That's going to feel wrong in some cases, but I have to start by being honest by the deficits that my biological parents had. And I can still love them and respect them, but I can say they didn't meet my needs in these areas. So I now have to learn how to parent myself and meet those needs in myself in a healthy way. That's what reparenting is about. So another way to say that is that trauma healing, fawning healing is I now can become the parent I always needed as a child. That is so important. So let me read what somebody said. For me, reparenting meant I had to choose me even though no one else ever did. I had to love myself unconditionally, see my worth, stop waiting for other people to see me first. So this again is a huge topic, but it's so important. But it's realizing I can't outsource now to everybody else that you have to take care of me and meet my needs. No, now the locus of control has to be internal. It has to be me. I now am responsible to parent myself, to meet my needs, to take care of me where others didn't. And I can do it, I can learn it, and I can become good at it. And that's part of being healthy. So, is it possible to heal from fawning? Yes. There's not a magic fix. It is a journey. It's a lot of work. It takes time. And it's a bit messy at times, but it is possible. And for those who work at it, it is well worth it.